Today I wanted to discuss Ghostbusters 2. Now, I think Ghostbusters 2 is a criminally underrated movie. I watched the first Ghostbusters 2 nights ago, and I was able to rewatch Ghostbusters 2 twice over the past 2 days, and I can say that I enjoy this movie a lot. And yet, for some reason, this movie gets a lot of hate. I mean, some people have had the audacity to come out and say that Ghostbusters 2016 is superior to Ghostbusters 2, and I just don't understand that position at all. If you haven't seen the movie, this is going to be kind of a spoilery review, so I'm just going to discuss a bunch of things that I like and don't like about the movie, but just in case you don't know the storyline, here's the basic rundown. It has been 5 years since the events of the first film, and the Ghostbusters are out of business because they have been sued for damages that they caused while saving New York City in the previous film. Dana Barrett, played by Sigourney Weaver, notices strange things happening around her and her newborn baby, and she calls the Ghostbusters to once again help her investigate what's going on. They end up discovering that a river of slime has been building up in the abandoned subways underneath the city that is fed by all of the negative energy of the miserable people in New York City. A ghost of a 17th century Carpathian tyrant named Vigo is living in a painting in the museum where Dana works, and he is feeding off the negative energy of the slime so that he can gain enough power to be reborn by possessing Dana's baby. The Ghostbusters come out of retirement to save New York City again before Vigo can come back to life and take over the world. Now, even though I like this movie and I do defend it, I will admit that this movie is clearly not as good as the first one. The first film was a worldwide phenomenon, but the sequel just did not impress critics and general audiences, and even Bill Murray has openly shared his disdain for this movie. I think the biggest complaint you can make about this movie is that it treads a lot of the same territory as the first film. For example, once again, Dana is being stalked by evil spirits, the Ghostbusters are hired to come investigate, Venkman is still doing his psychic shtick. They have a montage of them ghostbusting and advertising on TV. They have a montage of the ghosts taking over the city in the final act of the movie. They need to meet with the mayor to get his help to stop a major catastrophe. The Ghostbusters get incarcerated. Regurgitating the same story beats is a common problem found in sequels, and Ghostbusters 2 seems to fall into the same trap. I guess another thing you can complain about is the movie does get a little slow in some places, particularly where it focuses on Bill Murray trying to court Sigourney Weaver. Every time there's a scene transition and they play her little piano theme song, it does drag a bit. I really don't care about seeing Peter and Dana going on dates in New York City while discussing why her ex left her. I guess a third thing you could argue is that the movie is a little too preachy. I mean, the moral of the story is that we should all be nicer to each other. The negative energy of mean New Yorkers is killing the city, and the Ghostbusters have to use the positive energy of the people to fight back, and they rally the people's positive energy by making the Statue of Liberty come to life and march down Times Square. I actually think the Statue of Liberty scene is a pretty rad special effect, but I admit it is a little cheesy, but I don't think it's cheesy enough to derail the movie for me. In spite of the shortcomings I just discussed, I think this movie is still very entertaining. I love the humor in this movie. It's not rolling on the floor laughing kind of funny, but neither was the first movie if you think about it. It has that dry, subtle humor, which is mostly driven by Bill Murray, but Harold Ramis is actually very funny in this movie too. So one of my favorite lines in the first Ghostbusters movie is when they accidentally shoot at the hotel maid, and then she says, "What the heck are you doing?" And then Peter Venkman says, "Oh, sorry, we thought you were someone else." Like, that's not a terribly clever line or some kind of brilliant joke, but I mean, just the way that Bill Murray delivers it makes it absolutely hilarious. And there's a lot of stuff like that in Ghostbusters 2. A scene that really cracks me up in this movie is when Dana is visiting Egon at the beginning of the film, and he's running a lab where he's doing experiments on angry people, trying to measure the negative energy that they give off. And he has this little mobile scanner that he walks around with to measure the negative energy. During their conversation, Dana turns her back to Egon and asks if Peter Venkman ever talks about her. And then Egon pauses and then says, "No." And then he waves his negative energy device over her to try and get a reading. It's just such a subtle joke that I laugh out loud when I see it. I also like it when they turn on their proton packs during the Scoleri brothers scene. They turn on their proton packs one at a time, and Bill Murray starts and he turns it on and he says "Do," and then Ray clicks his on and says "Ray." Then Egon clicks his on and he says "Egon." I had to have that joke explained to me as a kid, but when it was explained to me, it was really funny. Another funny scene is where Venkman is teasing Egon and he asks him if the college girls are attracted to his large cranium. And then Egon says, I think they're more interested in my epididymis. And then Bill Murray gives an awkward chuckle and then he just kind of stares awkwardly as if he has no idea what he just said. And I admit I had to look up what an epididymis was. It's a funny movie. It's a very funny movie. I also like the creepy aspects of the movie. There are some scenes in this movie that really freaked me out as a kid, much more effectively than did anything from the first Ghostbusters movie. The scariest scene in Ghostbusters 2 is when they're in the abandoned subway tunnel trying to find the source of the evil slime. And it's Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson in the tunnel. And as they're walking, they notice that there's an echo, and so they start messing around, and Dan Aykroyd yells, "Hey!" And then you hear the echo in the tunnel, and then Winston says, "Hello!" And then there's no echo. And then you just suddenly hear this deep growling voice say, "Word Star!" they turn around, and they're still freaking out, and then they turn around, and then there are a bunch of decapitated heads stuck on pikes screaming at them in the middle of the subway. And oh man, as a kid, that freaked me out. It took me a long time before I was finally able to open my eyes and watch that scene in full. The highlight of Ghostbusters 2 is the Scoleri brothers scene. I love every bit of this scene. The Ghostbusters are being tried for violating the terms of their parole, and while the judge is passing down the sentence, the slime in the container on the evidence table begins to boil over, and then two ghosts burst into the courtroom, and they're sitting in electric chairs, and electricity is shooting out all across the room, and you find out that they're the Scoleri brothers, who the judge had executed for committing murder. I love it because the ghosts are going around the room wrecking things, and then they disappear. The Ghostbusters get their packs on, and they're waiting for something to happen, and then the wind starts to pick up, and then the chairs in the courtroom just start getting knocked up violently into the air one by one, and they just like start to get really close to the Ghostbusters, and then the ghosts finally appear, and they shoot their proton packs at them, and it's a great scene. Another highlight for this movie is the guy who plays Janosch, the creepy henchman of Vigo. He's played by an actor named Peter McNichol, and I haven't seen him in anything other than the Bean movie and Baby Geniuses. He does a foreign accent just so well in this movie, and he's a very good comedic actor. I'm surprised I haven't seen him in much else. This movie doesn't improve upon much from the first film, but I will say that the special effects are significantly better and the sound mixing is also much better. Something that always frustrated me about the first Ghostbusters movie is just how bad the sound mixing is in so many scenes. Anytime something gets really loud in the movie, like the scene when Dana opens the fridge and she sees the hellhound roar Zool, it's like the sound gets really quiet and really muffled, and you see Dana scream, but barely any noise is coming out of her mouth, and for some reason, the whole scene just looks really awkward, and it really takes away from the shock value of the scene. I don't understand why, when something is supposed to be loud in the first Ghostbusters movie, it gets really quiet and muffled. Yeah, the sound mixing has always bugged the crap out of me in the first movie. Also, those hellhounds look absolutely terrible running around in their stop motion animation. They look pretty cool as animatronics, but when they're chasing Rick Moranis through the park, it looks preposterous. And I understand that the movie was made in the mid 80s and they had limited special effects technology and a limited budget. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that those are good special effects just because it's a Ghostbusters movie. As you are probably aware, Ghostbusters Afterlife will be coming out in a few short weeks, and I am not very excited for that movie, but I hope that I am pleasantly surprised. I have just wanted them to make a Ghostbusters 3 for a long time, and it just frustrates the crap out of me that Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis weren't able to iron out a good script before Harold Ramis's death. Yeah, after he died, it seemed like the idea that the Ghostbusters would reunite was going to be an impossibility, and it was further cemented. That impossibility was further cemented when they went the hard reboot route with Ghostbusters 2016. I'm very glad that Ghostbusters Afterlife will at least take place in the same universe as the original Ghostbusters, and it has been confirmed for a while now that the original Ghostbusters will be making their return at some point in Ghostbusters Afterlife, and yeah, I hope it's worth it. I just can't stand movies about kids, man. There are obviously exceptions, like It. It was a great movie with kids in it, but I don't want to see middle school aged Ghostbusters, man. I want to see Bill Murray. So those are my thoughts on Ghostbusters 2. I think it's a good time. It's a good family film. Maybe, I don't know, kids maybe 8 years old, 10 years old, not too young. There's some pretty scary scenes in it, but yeah, it's a good family movie that doesn't make you want to jump off a cliff, so that's always good. If you disagree with me, let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you next time.